Hello, welcome back to the Ohio SBDC Progress Not Panic 2020 video series. I'm your host Kevin Hammond of the Ohio SBDC at Columbus State Community College. Glad to be here. Thank you for watching today. So this is part 2 of the Start a Business series that we're doing for this month. And for this series here, for this video here, I should say, what we're going to be talking about with part 2 is looking at the problem that you're trying to solve with your business. We're going to be looking at what's the importance of the customer, why should that customer focus be the main thing you should be thinking about, and we're going to be looking at how do we put together that customer profile that's so important for us to know as we go into our business. So the first thing is looking at your business, whatever you're going to offer. What you want to think about with that is that you're not just offering these, widgets or these services or whatever it might be. What you're really doing with your business and what you really are is you're solving problems. You're a problem solver, and really getting into that mindset when you're starting out and when you're going through those motions of starting your business. That's really the key thing there to keep in mind is whatever you're doing should be solving a problem that you found in the marketplace. So when you think about that, what problem does your product or service solve in the market? And then think about, why hasn't it been solved before, or at least in the way that you're going to be solving it? And what's the cause of the problem? Why does that problem exist? Well, looking at those things there is key. So when we think about problem, looking at pain points, problems that we see in our day-to-day lives, that maybe sparks the idea that we have, whatever those pain points that are out there that your users and buyers may have, that represents an opportunity for you to be that problem solver for what you're going to be offering in your business. And the opportunity for you then is to create these this solution or these solutions to these problem and pain points. And as I mentioned, really understand what's that root cause of the problem, and what's the reasons why it exists, how far back does it go, all those kind of things there. You don't need a super huge market, to have a successful business, but it needs to be big enough to sustain whatever goals you have for your business. So one thing we always say is don't be a solution don't create a solution that's trying to find a problem, right? That's kind of the reverse. What you want to do is look at what's those problems that's out there, and then you come up with a solution. So don't be a solution seeking a problem. You really want to identify the market problem, then get that solution going. And really, once you've done that, that's going to really help you to know that you stand a strong chance of this business being viable. And it is part of the validation process too, is really looking at the marketplace and the problems that are out there, the pain points that your service or product is going to solve. So what problem does your business address in the market, and how exactly, specifically, will your solution solve those problems? Those are some things you want to write out and really figure out, determine those things. Now, as I mentioned, really put yourself in that mindset of you're a problem solver. Remember that the service or product serves as a solution to a customer's problem. Whatever they're experiencing, what you're going to provide, ideally, is helping that customer. Whether it's a business, or if you're a business to business, or if you're selling to consumers. Either way, it's there to address and solve a problem that you have something that can fix. You really want to concentrate your efforts on the benefits and those positive experiences that can be derived from using the product or service that you offer. So when we think about going into business, what we also want to think about is what's that minimum viable market that we can get, that minimum viable product or service, that just enough to get out there to start getting that feedback and that information that we need from the marketplace. So also want to mention that when you're going into business, you have a grand vision typically, or you have some type of a vision of where you want this business to go or where you think this business could go And that's great. It will take steps to get there, and that's why focusing on just enough, just again, minimum viable, just enough to get out there, just enough viable to get that feedback, that input, and so forth. Then you go through the growth, motions and so forth, the different changes and pivots you're going to make throughout the process, and that's really key there. So the next focus is the customer, right? They always say, cash is king. Well, true, but when you're in business, not only cash is king, but the customer is as well, king, queen, right? So it's super important to have that laser-like focus on that customer focus as you're thinking about going into this business. And that's just super important. Why is it so important? You need to know, are there enough buyers out there? Are there enough users and buyers, enough customers out there? And you won't really know that until you figure out who those customers, at least that initial segment you're going to go after, is. It's going to really help you know if your idea is good enough. And if it's not, it's going to, you also get that feedback, that information, the research you're going to do. It will allow you to make some different iterations and pivots in what you're doing and your tactics and changes to the product or service that may, still, be what it is, but changes enough, just enough to fit the market that's really truly out there that you identify. Once you know who that customer is, it's also a heck of a lot easier to market to those customers, to spend, marketing dollars or just marketing time to get the best return on that marketing money and dollar and time, if you know who you're going after, right? So let's say you're starting a restaurant, so your customer isn't just everybody because everybody eats, right? So it's whatever it is, there's always a clearly defined customer. I call it like the 80%, right? So you have a 80% most likely customer for no matter what you have out there, and really digging deep and figuring out, doing the research and figuring out who that initial customer is going to be, as much as you can know about them as possible. And knowing the market is one of those main factors. Knowing that customer, main factors in that validation of that business idea. It really is all about the customers, right? So when you're going into business, a lot of times we go into business because we have different reasons, but we want to be our own boss and those kind of things, which is great. When you go into business, though, you have lots of bosses because you have lots of customers to serve, ideally. So, keeping that focus on who the customer is and how you're going to find those customers, how you're going to identify who the customers are. Nothing happens in a business until you sell something, right? So that's why you got to figure out where these customers are at, who they are. Are they going to be willing to buy what it is you're selling at the price point that you can sell it at and still make money? You must really create value for your customer. It has to be something that they need, that they want, that they're willing to part money for and give it to you, because whatever you're going to give them is something that's worth their money. They spent time working and whatever to make that money. So whatever you have has to have that value. Remember, it's kind of tough to say this, but no one really cares about what you're doing. Really, they care about what you can do for them, right? So as far as a business goes, you might be having the greatest next burger, the best new software product, the best consulting technique that you think you can use, or coaching technique, whatever it might be. What the customers really care about is what it can do for them. How can it make their life better, save them time, save them money, whatever it might be. So just keep that in mind, that that's what the customers really care about. And what you need to do is really prove or disprove your idea. Are there really enough customers out there that want to buy your product or service? Really enough out there to make it viable. And we'll get into the numbers and stuff in another part of this series here. And that's we really need to figure out those things too as part of this process of starting a business. If there are enough customers out there, then are they also willing to buy your product or service, again, at a price that can make you a profit, by factoring all your cost in there. So those are things you need to go through with this, the validation process, with the startup process, to prove or disprove if your idea really has merit and if there's customers out there for it. So again, I mentioned that it's really important to be focused on who that customer is. So what we got to figure out next is, well, who is that customer, right? So we got to start building that customer profile, that initial customer profile. Now, you're not gonna get a rock solid, I know exactly who my customer is 100% off the bat. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some research and data and so forth. But you got to start someplace, right? You got to figure out what's this first initial market that I'm going to go after. And I think I mentioned this before. I call it like the 80%, right? So again, for whatever product or service is out there, there's always a most likely buyer, and that's what you want to look at for your business as you're getting started. Initially, is what's that initial market that you're going to go after. It's crucial to start this process with the customer, focus on the customer, thinking about that in mind, and then work your way back from there. So who's the customer, working your way back from there. Now, I mentioned that you have to think about what's that initial market segment that you're going to go after. So you kind of need to think about, when you're doing the research, the primary market research, which is that first segment that you're going to go after that you can select and start looking at. Do you think it's the most likely customer, or at least the ones that you can get initially? And then you can always expand to the other segments that are out there. And that's kind of step one, is figuring out what's that first segment you're going to go to. And the reason why is if you're starting out, it's a startup, you only have so much time, you only have so much resources, you only have so much money, and you have to have your focus someplace, and that should be on that first initial customer segment that you're going to go after. And that's really going to help you really determine who that customer is that you're going to first be marketing to, and increase your chances of success. Now, to get this customer profile kicked off, to get it going, what you're going to need to do is start doing some market research. And what we call this the secondary market research, where you're going to be using a lot of the tools that are out there through the libraries and so forth. You can check out a couple of other videos we did in this series that covers market research pretty in depth. Lots of great tools that are out there. And by doing this research, what you really got to think about as you're building that customer profile is not just all the the demographics and so forth, but also those psychographics, the soft things. So psychographics such as their needs for security, for acceptance, whatever it might be. What do they value? Where do they hang out at? What types of buying behavior do they have? Where else do they shop at? What's their types of peer groups, social groups? What type of social media do they use? What are they doing on the weekends, evenings? As much as you can find out about those types of things, like their habits, attitudes, behavior. So that's kind of the psychographics there that you're going to want to figure out through doing this market research as you start to develop that customer profile. And with this customer profile, use your buyer profile, you're really using the market research techniques to build out that description of who that customer is, that demographics, the psychographics. If you're a business selling to businesses, you want to know as much as you can about those businesses you're going to be going after initially, as well as those behind the scenes that are going to, that work in the business that you're actually going to be selling to. So the business is full of people, so you still have to know as much about them as you can, especially the ones you're going to be serving within those businesses, the ones that are going to be making those buying choices. So really figuring out as much about what drives their purchasing behavior and what's going to want to make them want to buy your product or service that they can use within their company. And the key thing, as I mentioned, is to keep that focus on that end user, whoever's going to be using that product or service, and really getting that deep as you possibly can understanding of who that customer is, and as you build that customer profile. So I mentioned psychographics before. There are a couple tools out there that are in my research videos that I mentioned before you can check out that can help you look at psychographics for certain things that are out there. based upon geographics and so forth. So lots of tools that are out there. I want to mention with the customer profile that a part of putting that together isn't just doing the secondary market research that you're going to be doing through libraries and sources you can find online, but it's also going to be doing the real important market research of doing the primary market research, the direct market research of surveying your customers, talking to them, engaging with them, and I'll talk more in depth in that in an upcoming video in this startup series. So I want to give you an example of a customer profile that you can think about. So let's say you're trying to start a fitness and nutrition coaching program for ladies, and let's say you want to pick you're picking maybe the Gen X to maybe young baby boomers. You're kind of your focus there. So the way you could build a profile out for there, this is just an example, and again, it depends upon where you're at, what kind of the things you're going to be doing, the differences in your fitness and nutrition coaching program that you would have. But just as an example here, we could have a demographic profile of these ladies could be, let's say, ages of 45 to 65. They're married, they have 2.5 kids. They live in a certain part of town, maybe they live in Westerville, and they have a household income that's typically $100,000 to maybe $125,000, $140,000. And then you throw that in with the psychographics of this profile, and again, what's driving their behavior that may be relevant to what you're offering. In this case, they may be concerned about their health, their appearance, just being able to feel better, look better, keep up with kids, potentially grandkids, those kind of things. They want a healthy lifestyle, and they maybe don't want to take a whole lot of time on it. Maybe they don't want to have to do their own nutrition plan. Maybe they like having a personal trainer, so time is maybe a big value for them. Maybe they enjoy going online in the evenings. Maybe they're big in social media at certain times. Maybe they love Pinterest. Maybe they shop at outlet malls more than they shop at maybe online and so forth. So that could be something. Maybe they're against they don't like going to the real huge, ginormous, big box fitness centers. They like one that's a little bit more focused, just mostly for ladies in this case here. So that's kind of an example of a customer profile there that you could be thinking about for your business. So when we're doing this market research, it's really figuring out those things such as I mentioned, the age, things like gender, geographic location, what's their education level, types of jobs and occupations they're in, their income ranges, types of households they have, size of households, renters, are they owners, renters, how much do they spend typically on a certain categories that you're offering annually or monthly, whatever the things might be there. So those are some things you want to think about as you're building your initial customer profile out. If you're a business to business, you want to think about things about the businesses you're going to be going after. And again, we're thinking about your first initial market you're going to go after, right? So again, you can pivot to other segments, but you got to think about what's that first initial customer is going to look like if you're business to business. So it could be, what's the age of the company you're going after? How long has it been in business? What stage is it in? Is it new, growing, kind of plateaued? How many employees does it have? Is it a franchise? Is it public? Is it private? Where is it located at? What's the geographical region it's in? How many offices does it have? What type of revenue does it have? What types of budgetary things do they have, especially as it relates to the purchases, the type of stuff that you'd be trying to sell them. So could be an example there of a business-to-business profile that you would want to build if you're going into that type of a business. So that kind of covers what I wanted to go over today for part 2 of the Start a Business series. So again, we got a chance to focus on what's the problem you're solving, and we'll get in the mindset that you're a problem solver, the importance of why we have to focus a lot on who's the customer, and starting to build out that customer profile. So in the next videos, we're going to be talking about doing that primary market research. We're going to be looking at going into competition. And as I mentioned in the first video, we are going to be also having a couple guest interviews on this as well for a different few topics and so forth. So we're going over this in a sequence here that we think is typically the steps that you would want to take to be a successful entrepreneur. So hope you found this helpful today, and again, thank you for watching these videos. Feel free to subscribe to the channel there, and do the whole like thing, like all the YouTubers say. Thank you for joining today. Leave any comments for any future videos that you would like us to have, and feel free to reach out to us anytime. We're all here. I think I've said this before in my videos. Whole state of Ohio, small business folks, SBDC, we're all working, 150% capacity right now. So we're here for you, for all the small businesses out there. And again, we think it's a great time to start a business. So that's why we're doing these videos now as part of the Progress Not Panic series. So thanks again for joining, and I'll see you next time. Bye.